Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So today I've got a 96% rated draft team for your game week one in FPL. And it's got some interesting picks, to be honest. Not all of them I was considering for my own team, but I do think it's important to have an open mind and not get too tunnel vision. Keep those options open. So if it does help you out, please do subscribe, like the video. Honestly, the support has been amazing in pre-season. We've had over 60 new subscribers in the last 2.5 weeks alone, which for a small channel trying to grow is pretty amazing, to be honest. And I'm super grateful for all the support. If you can help us keep growing, that would be appreciated. Let's take a look at the team. So, first of all, it is 96% rated. Shout out to Fantasy Football Hub for their team rater tool here. This is where I got this rating from. And I've also got my league code for the mini league on the screen as well. If you want to join in with that, you are more than welcome. And the value of this team is 100 million, just capping it there. There's no wiggle room to be had here, but we will talk about some cheaper options that you can save some transfer funds on if you want to keep your options open for those early transfers in the start of the season. So the first player we're going to look at is Verbruggen from Brighton, and he's one of the cheaper goalkeepers. He's not someone that's necessarily going to stand out. Fixtures, they're okay. I quite like the Fulham and Everton games, and the Bournemouth and Spurs games are at least have potential for clean sheets. But he is someone that at 4.5 million is a bit of an enabler for you to get in more expensive players elsewhere. We often acknowledge that the point difference between the top and bottom keepers is the smallest out of any position in FPL. So if you were going to save some money and try and cover the points a little bit in a position, it would be in goal. Only 7.1% owned, and he did actually get an assist last season as well. So you do have a really slim chance of an attacking return. So into defense, and Kirkes is the premium defender here. I tried to balance it out by going for Colwell as a Chelsea player because in a lot of drafts that I've been doing so far, I've had Cucurella in that team. So we do still cover the potential for a Chelsea clean sheet. And Kirkes for me is above someone like a Frimpong, at least at the start of the season, because he does have that Premier League experience, whereas Frimpong would have to settle in to a new league and potentially a new style of play. I also picked Van der Ven. Now, for someone who started 12 games last season, completely injury hit season, I am hoping that he will start more often. I don't think we can argue that when fit, he plays for Spurs. It's just if he can stay healthy, because those fixtures look really good. As a potential attacking centre defender who could also get you defensive metrics, he is someone that I do think is worth the price at 4.5 million. There's not many defenders at that price who I'd put above him. Now, having 17.1% ownership does show that a lot of people are getting him in. But whilst that looks quite high, there's still only 1 in 5 teams. So you would say 4 in 5 teams don't have him in. So I do think he represents some good value to be had there. If you were to save money anywhere in this team, I think I probably would upgrade Colwell to Cucurella if you wanted to slim down in your midfield. So speaking of midfield, we have a lot of big hitters here, and that is handy when making early transfers in the season because let's say you wanted to get rid of one of Saka, Palmer, and Salah. Well, they're the three most expensive midfielders in FPL. So you could literally go to any other midfielder and, like I say, save a couple of million to upgrade a Colwell to a Cucurella. Now, Semenyo is the fourth midfielder here, and I think he's being super underrated at the start of the season. Only 5.1% owned for someone who got 18 attacking returns last season in a Bournemouth team where he is pretty much the focal point. I think is great. The fixtures look really good. So Wolves, Brighton, and Leeds all in the first six. Yeah, he has some tricky fixtures, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did get some attacking returns against either Liverpool, Spurs, or Newcastle. And for me, he's the best midfielder at 7 million. So up front is where it does get really interesting because I've got the three most expensive midfielders in this team. have had to slim down on the attack, and there's no premium strikers. But I do think if you were going to go big, going in midfield where it's an extra point for a goal and they have the potential for clean sheet points is worth it over a striker at the same price. I've managed to get Jared Bowen in here now. If he was a midfielder, I think a lot more people would be picking him up. He is nearly 20% owned as it is, which is quite surprising for me, and it does go to show that there is a real lack of premium strikers, especially with the Isak situation being a bit uncertain and Haaland being so much more expensive than the rest. So I think Bowen, with those West Ham fixtures, looks really appealing. If West Ham score, it's probably because Bowen is involved. And at 8 million, he is someone that scores pretty regularly. Now, Teo is an interesting pick. As far as I'm aware, or at time of recording, Everton, he's their main striker. So whilst he might not be the most clinical player, at 5.5 million, you pretty much need to go for him or just drop to a 4.5 million player and keep them on your bench. So if you wanted a more well-rounded squad, I think Beto is a good shout. I've also got Strand Larson here, who, if you've been watching the videos in pre-season, you'll know I'm pretty high on Strand Larson, and I think he's a fantastic underrated pick so far in the pre-season. So that's the team in a nutshell. I think overall the strengths are that the players come from a variety of teams. We've got a couple of Chelsea, a couple of Liverpool, and a couple of West Ham. But other than that, you've got your Brighton, Spurs, Bournemouth, Everton, Wolves. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket here because sometimes teams surprise us and they don't necessarily do as well as you'd have thought. If that's the case, you don't have the need to transfer out three players from a single team in order to just kind of save your season. And we've also got some big hitters in here additionally. So big hitters are great because you need someone to captain and you want those players who have a high ceiling in FPL in order to get you those big attacking returns, as well as those players who just tick along nicely. So the weaknesses are, the strikers aren't necessarily the best. I think you'd normally start with Strand Larson and Jared Bowen as your two players up front with Beto on the bench. And when Everton have some easier fixtures, I think you'd quite easily slot Beto into the lineup. But unless you were going to drop, one of Saka, Palmer, and Salah, there's not really an easy way to upgrade to a Watkins, Isak, and certainly not a Haaland. And speaking of Haaland, another potential weakness is no Man City. So if you think Man City are going to have a turnaround season and perform really well, then I think there's someone worth getting in. But there's not really anyone other than Marmoush in midfield that I would personally recommend for your teams right about now. If you did want to go for a premium defender, I guess I'd go for Gvardiol. I just think why would you go for Gvardiol when he's battling with 8 Nuri for minutes? When you could go for a Kirkes or a Kukurea instead. So that's the team. Hopefully, it's helped you out with your own transfer thoughts. If it has, please do subscribe, like the video, and also go check out my other videos. Playlist will be on the screen right about now, where we talk in depth and use a lot of data and charts looking at where we can find the value players in the pre-season content. So thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you're having a good season or pre-season. Looking forward to the start of the new season. I will see you in the next one.